Good morning and welcome back to the channel. We're in the Morven Lounge live here. Myself, JP, joining me, Ryan and Alan. And we've got a great guest episode today, folks, for us. PLZ soccer host, football pundit, Peter Martin. Good morning, Peter, how are you?
Good morning, apologies, sore throat. Thought about calling it off and then thought the three of you would give me the biggest doing ever, so I'm turning up.
Dave too would have called off, by the way, to be fair. But Ryan, great guest for us today, mate. I'm looking forward to this one and hearing the stories, mate.
Yeah, fantastic. For me, it's a massive coup for the podcast to get Peter on. We've all followed Scottish football for years, and we know Peter's work, broadcaster, pundit, radio host. He does obviously speakers things as well, so very well regarded, and the journalist kind of reader side of Scottish football. So looking forward to hear his story and kind of chat with him, some cakes, some tea. So that's one of our bucket list. Peter Martin, a cup of tea. So fantastic, mate. Looking forward to it.
Alan, we're all set up here for it's a living room we're in, innit? It's like somebody's house and cakes and tea and everything.
Ryan's made them and then put them in Greg's boxes. That's some nice baking you've done there, Ryan, so I'm sure we'll appreciate that later on. But it's lovely to have Peter. It's much appreciated to have him on for the show. When if you make a kind of broadcasting Mount Rushmore of Scottish football, I'm sure that Peter's face would be on that right at the front. Yeah. So he's obviously contributed massively.
Hopefully,
watching Peter.
Hopefully, me, you, and Ryan would be beside him. No?
Yeah. I can think of about 20 people that are saying no, he wouldn't be.
I thought it'd be a good idea to ask you along today to get a wee chat with yourself about how it all kind of started for you in terms of Scottish football, and what kind of got you into that sort of position that you're in just now.
Well, I mean, I was brought up a Celtic fan. I think you can be a fan because most of the people who work at PLZ Soccer all are fans of Celtic, Rangers, Hibs, Hearts. When you're a journalist, it's a different kettle of fish. You have to try and be impartial. You have to be balanced. You have to be fair, and that's what I mentioned to everybody who works for us. As soon as you cross the line, you have to work as a professional journalist. From my point of view, I was lucky enough to be, brought up in a time where there were some magical players that I got to see, and over and above that, amazingly, my mum followed Celtic all over Europe. Right. So she took us to the games, and then eventually I would go with my mates. But then obviously when you get into journalism, I started out in rugby at Radio Borders and ended up at Radio 4th, and then from there STV asked us if I'd come and join Scott Sport, and from Scott Sport on towards where did I go? Radio Clyde as the head of sport, and then from there Sky Sports and Talk Sport, and then eventually in 2012 I decided to set up PLZ Soccer. So it's been a roller coaster ride. I've sampled a lot, I've written for the Evening Times, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've taken on board so many pieces of advice from people who chat to you about the game, how you approach it as a journalist, what you're there to do, and basically, while I still love to see Celtic win games, my job is to comment on what I see before me. Yes. And sometimes, as you know yourself, guys, sometimes managers paint a picture of a game that you don't think you've just watched. So it's been a great journey, and when I think about some of the fantastic games that I've witnessed, and some of the friends I've made along the way, I mean, Tam Burns and I were great pals, played football, and any time that Tam had organised a game, he'd phone me up and say, right, Pedro, get in the car, pick me up, we're on our way. So it's every kid's dream to go and watch a team, and then suddenly you've got a good 7 or 8 of them are your mates.
Yeah. So see, growing up, you mentioned about obviously watching Celtic. Who was the guys that you actually looked upon as, maybe not your heroes, but the guys that you admired that playing football you enjoyed watching whilst growing up? Who's the names that maybe pop into your head there?
Oh, well, my all-time hero, I had two. One of them was Ken Dalglish. Yeah. Oh. The other one was Danny McGrain, and my sister was an artist. She put the painting of Dalglish on one wall in the Liverpool top, and Danny McGrain on the other. The two of them were magnificent. Their sense of humour appealed to me as well. Danny could leather you in one line, and Kenny had a great dry sense of humour. So, but two brilliant players. I mean, McGrain, at one point, one of the world's greatest fullbacks, and Dalglish was just a genius. I mean, I know a lot of people of a certain generation will say Henrik Larsson. There's another generation I was lucky enough to see the tail end of Jimmy Johnston's career. But Dalglish was head and shoulders.
And you definitely see that way how much he's admired in a massive side like Liverpool as well. So for us to experience a player of Kenny Dalglish's quality, I think obviously it's just slightly before our time, but he was a very important player for Celtic and
By the way,
Scotland.
The Celtic fans were raging when he left. I mean, they were raging, but what they didn't realise was Ken Dalglish was 27. He'd given Celtic a good 9 years, from the development of the Quality Street kids, and then breaking into the side. He'd given Celtic a lot of success and a lot of great moments. And even in his mind, he probably looked at Scottish football and thought, I've got to move on, I want to achieve something. I've trained with the Lisbon Lions, I've sucked up as much knowledge as I can. I now want to go on and look at Liverpool because they were the kings of Europe. Yeah,
and he did succeed. He's got kind of hero status down there, definitely now, as well as kind of going on to having a decent managerial career as well.
You see, obviously, like you mentioned, obviously started off certain places and then now you're the PSL soccer. Was it being a footballer? Was that your main thing when you were younger, or was a journalist and that type of media? Was that always something you wanted to get into?
Yeah, it was always what I wanted to do. I used to DJ in nightclubs as well, earn money, and I'd drive about 2.5 hours from Gala Shields covering rugby and football there, and going across to Glasgow, going into nightclubs. A lot of my mates know me from there as well, and then going through to Edinburgh and becoming the sports editor at Radio 4. I always wanted to do it. I wanted to be a commentator, and luckily enough, being a commentator and seeing some marvellous games, that I was able to not only comment on, but over and above that, some of the games, luckily for us, we won a few awards. They were iconic commentaries, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. The presenting and the journalism aspect of it was something I always wanted to do. So it's a dream. As my mother used to say to me, calm down, Peter, you're not digging up roads, you're watching football. It's not exactly, you're not in one of those difficult jobs out in the rain, in the pouring rain. So from that point of view, it's a dream job.
Has there been any games, obviously you've probably seen a lot of European games, a lot of Celtic, Rangers games, Derby games. Is there any game that stands out, you've been commenting on a certain goal that you think, I've just witnessed that, and is there any iconic, like, I know you're used to big commentary, and is there anything iconic you can remember, go, wow, that game was just, in my journalist career or commentating career, something that, wow, that's in my memory?
Yeah, two games stand out. First one's obviously James McFadden in Paris. We were obviously hotly tipped to get battered. The Scotland had mugged them at Hampden, and Thierry Henry looked into the camera and said, we'll see you in Paris. And then when we went there, I mean, it was one moment, and as you know, I went berserk. McFadden hits the ball into the roof of the net and all hell lets loose. But that stuck out because there were so many Tartan Army fans, and there was this sense of impending doom. And boy, for 89 minutes they battered us. I think James McFadden, funnily enough, I play six-a-side with James now. James McFadden had a nutmeg on the halfway line in the first half, and I treated it as if it was a goal because we hadn't even been in their half. It was a great game. The second one is one of my favourite commentaries. I mean, I know everybody talks about Larsson and Boavista, but the best one for me is John Hartson at Anfield. Because when Celtic go down there, everybody's saying, well, you've had your chance. Liverpool are going to batter you. you've lost. You're going to be out of the tournament. And boy, when John Harson played the 1-2 and hit the screamer, it was a great night. I was with Davy Provan, and when I'd gone down to do the press conference, when I came back up, Davy had said to me, not only was it great to see Celtic beat Liverpool, he said, but on the radio a woman had phoned in and said, the reason why I love listening to Peter Martin's commentary is you know exactly where the ball is on the pitch and you're excited and you go along with the roller coaster of it, you know.
My dad says that about you too.
Yeah.
He used to say that. He says, I love Peter Martin commentary. I said, why? Yeah, that's exactly what he said, because you know exactly where the ball is on the puck.
Yeah. So, I mean, you want to get the excitement, and by the way, it's an entertainment.
Yeah.
You want to enjoy it. When I hear commentators now, and you know they're as flat as a pancake, I'm thinking, how could you possibly influence somebody to go and watch your beautiful game if you can't get excited about what you're watching?
Do you remember the guy that when Channel 5 had football on, it was an English guy, and he always done it was the old UEFA Cup on a Thursday night, and he always came out with all these crackers. He used to call Gianluca Vialli Old Chrome Dome and all that. He still does kind of commentary, I think, for TalkSport. I don't know, I can't remember the name of his top of his head.
Is he Irish?
No, he's English. And to listen to his commentary, honestly, it was priceless because of how much enthusiasm he put into it, how much passion, but he was coming out with all these kind of one-liners and crackers constantly. Sometimes you hear that nowadays, like my wife was kind of howling was it last year, Chris Sutton, somebody went down, and Chris Sutton says there must be a sniper in the crowd.
Yeah. And
then there was one with Christopher Ayer as well, and he was running forward, and Chris Sutton said, "Oh, who's let that stray horse go?" And all that. He's running away like a stray horse. So I think some of the kind of enthusiasm and the passion that obviously yourself shows, it does enhance the level of football that you're going to watch, and it gives you that kind of that added extra when you're viewing the football.
Oh,
see, when you're doing the commentary, Peter, do you guys have you got like a certain script you've got to stick to, or do you get to just ad lib and do as you see?
No, I don't think you can stick to a script. I think you can prepare all the knowledge of the players, the teams, all of that. That's a long bit of preparation, and there are commentators far better than me who are unbelievably thorough in their research. I was lucky enough, I ran into John Motson early in my career, and he gave me his notes on a sheet, and he said, if you put it together like this, it will serve you well. And I was able to do that, and then from there you can't rehearse a commentary. You can only describe what's unfolding, and if you've got the excitement of a crowd, if you've got the tenseness of what's at stake, and then you've got John Hartson ripping it into the roof of the net, you've got the perfect entertainment for everybody. And remember as well, on radio you're describing what people can't see. So you know, like yesterday, like yesterday, I was speaking to a group of people at Heriot Watt University who are all lecturers and teachers, and they wanted to try and mix up the way they teach people to try and get them to retain certain parts of the course better than other areas. And I just said, you know, the passion, mixing it up, trying different things is how you can engage people. You've got to try and get them to the point where they're listening and they're not bored. And from my point of view, you know, once McFadden hits that ball into the roof of the net, I mean, my sisters sometimes at the time in 2007, they would go on a bus and they'd be going into the town, and somebody's ringtone would go off with my screaming voice, and my sister's like, I can't get rid of them.
Probably my best memory of football was, I don't know if you remember, it was the young Gura Hesselwhite scored in the very last minute. We needed to win that game.
The 2-1 game.
That's one with Caldwell put it in there.
Caldwell puts it in, and puts across with Scott McDonald, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think
that's right.
Scott McDonald.
94th minute, and I broke my chair at Celtic Park. That's how mad everybody was jumping on top. Oh, I've never felt any experience like that. But I could imagine yourself being there at kind of Paris. That would be kind of what a feeling.
I remember the commentary. I remember the noise in the commentary. It was brilliant.
That would be a certain degree of euphoria.
Fantastic.
To experience that.
when, obviously, you go through the journalism stage and everything else, is that quite a lengthy process to do?
It's a tremendous learning curve. From my point of view, I was lucky. I had a really great boss at Radio 4th, who helped guide me in a practical sense. He wanted me to do news as well, but I didn't really fancy that. I wanted to be constantly involved in football, and my job in the east of Scotland was to be the Hearts, Hibs, Raith Rovers and Dunfermline correspondent. So from there, he gave me a fabulous grounding, a fabulous education on, being hopefully a half decent journalist. Secondary to that, I got a lot of help when I came through to Radio Clyde from Paul Cooney. And if you get people in your life who help you, guide you, make you a better broadcaster, you're always indebted to them, because you're never the finished article. You're always learning. You're saying, I'll take the best of him. Somebody guides you and says, this is what you need to think about. This is what you need to look at. So there's been lots of really good people in my life who've helped me along the way. And of course, listen, I know everybody says they'd love to be a footballer. I was probably a late developer. I played football at schools level for a ladies' high, but I became a better footballer later on because I got to play with all the professionals. Because they constantly said, come and play in this game. Jim Duffy would say, Jim McInally, there's a game, Dukla Pumferson, I ended up playing for them 20 odd years ago. So I got to play with lots of great professionals and playing alongside Tam. I mean, to be honest with you, if Tam Burns thought I was a good player, I don't really give a shit what anybody else thinks. That'll do for me. That's when Tam phones me and says you're in, I feel $1 million, and that was it.
It's Peter Burgon.
Exactly. And when I turned up and it was Tam and Starkey, I knew I was left midfield because I wasn't getting the number 10, And the funny story is Gordon Strachan phoned me up one day and he said, by the way, will you do my anniversary, my 40th anniversary? And I said, aye, okay, and I didn't think, I said, just send me the details, no problem. So I put the phone down and I thought, 40th anniversary? And I looked it up, and at 40 years from when he phoned me, he was at Dundee. So I phoned him back and I said, wait a minute, I said, 40 years ago you were at Dundee, what anniversary are you talking about? And he said, no, my wedding anniversary. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? He says, look, all the boys from the Aberdeen side, some people from Celtic, a few players I played with, we're going to play Scottish legends against Spanish legends. And he says, and then the next day we'll have a big anniversary. You get up there and slaughter everybody. It'll be a great day. So I was like, fine. So on the Friday we turned up and he had all the Scotland tops laid out. Everybody had a brand new pair of boots. And when I walked into the dressing room, he just looked at me and he went, I bet you think you're the number 10, don't you? And I went, Gordon, if I'm not the number 10, I'll be fucking raging. I said, I'm in the middle of the park. And he opened the door and in walked Lenny, Gary McAllister, Mark McGee, Alex McLeish. And I'm thinking, I'm number 14. I'm not even going to get a start here. But it was just magical, to play in games like that, just to play with people that they were your heroes. Because when I was growing up, my mum used to say to me, it sounds really funny because she brought us up as a single parent, remember there are 2 teams on the park, son. So from my point of view, I could go, and I say to you, I used to DJ. I used to DJ for Davy Cooper's badminton and squash club. And also, over and above that, I had a love of Aberdeen at that time. I thought Strachan was outstanding as a player. And at Dundee United, I loved Paul Sturrock. I mean, these guys were brilliant. These were the days where we'd go on the supporters bus and I'd turn around to my mate and I'd go, wouldn't it be great if we got a draw up at Pittodrie today? Because Fergie's side just would batter you.
Told you. I tell him this the other night. I was days you were turning up to Celtic game going,
The new firm.
we were lucky to get a draw.
Yeah. Celtic played against Dundee United in a League Cup match at Celtic Park. I'll never forget it. It was absolutely pissing down with rain. And Dundee United were magnificent, right? They absolutely leathered Celtic.
Was that with Jim McLean?
Jim McLean. So it was 3-0 and Sturrock was outstanding. And at the end of the game, all the Celtic fans had stayed and they applauded Dundee United off the park. And Jim McLean came out for the after-match interview and he said, look at these fans, they've just been hammered by our Dundee United side. He said, if I had the Celtic fans following Dundee United, we'd win everything. And it was just one of those nights where Celtic fans just say, hey, you've been beaten by the better team. You know, it's like those days, you remember when Iniesta would get substituted, to get, standing ovation.
He couldn't believe that either. He was, he was in awe. He was like,
there are certain players that everywhere in life, there are certain players that do something that if you are a real football fan, you have to applaud it. Ronaldinho in the Bernabeu when they hammer Real Madrid and they basically give him a standing ovation, which...
There's games, I know what you're saying with that, because as much as I'm a massive Celtic fan, I just love seeing, obviously I go to watch Celtic, just in the Champions League games. I love going to see Celtic in the big European games and the Champions League noise and the atmosphere, but I do pay the money to go and see the other team as well, so probably say the best team I've seen, it was probably the best individual performance by players would be the PSG game. I think they beat us 5-1. 5-0 at Celtic Park, and they were unbelievable. Like Cavani, Verratti, Rabiot, not even Mbappe. It was Cavani.
I don't think he was there at the time.
It was Verratti, Rabiot, and Cavani, and I was right across for Cavani's header, right, and people were saying after the game, how much Craig Gordon goals should have saved it. See, sitting where that was, his angle was. These guys for me at the time, McGregor and Scott Brown, for me, are top players. But when you go and see these guys, you're thinking, this is... But that's probably the best team I've won. Wow, like, I've just actually... I know my teams get hammered, but I've just watched guys who take football to the next level.
Talk about with Barcelona, with Messi as well. I remember seeing a young Messi at Celtic Park and saying to my dad, how's that ball staying so close to his foot? It was as if he had about a 6-inch bit of string attached to the ball between his foot. It was just
he's still
mesmerising how close the ball was to his foot.
He's at the latter end of his career and he's still the same.
This is during the time when you're watching a Barcelona team that have got Busquets, Xavi and Iniesta. Arguably the best midfield trio that we've ever seen in my time anyway. Some of the teams that we've seen at Celtic Park over the last couple of decades, it's been fantastic to watch in one part, but awful to watch in the other. Like we've seen a couple of weeks ago against Dortmund, that was kind of hide behind the couch stuff. Definitely. And
I thought it could have been 10, did you?
Definitely. I phoned my dad at half time and I says, I'd take 7-1 right now. And he's like, oh no, we'll come back. We'll come back. And I'm like, he says, this could be 10.
And realistically, they're not even they're not one of the better Borussia Dortmund teams. And they still leathered Celtic.
I sat in here that morning, we done a tactical breakdown of the game, as we said before.
He's like, we'll do alright.
I think a 1-2-1.
I said a draw just to stay on that, but secretly
I was positive because of the way Celtic were playing, and then with the way Williams spoke to us at the time, he made it sound like they were struggling and they were really low in confidence, and I thought, right, if we're up against a team that's low in confidence, we've got players like Diaz and Maeda and stuff that will hurt them. So I was thinking along Nailing.
Did it work out like that?
No,
this is a Dortmund side.
I forgot they were all wee boys when they came out.
This Dortmund side continuously kind of they do better than they should in kind of European competitions as well. You look at last year, no one was expecting them to get to the kind of Champions League final, and they put up a proper fight against Real Madrid as well. I thought they were a proper better team for the majority of the game.
If the boy Fulkrug scores his chance, the game's different. I was at that Champions League final and they were magnificent, but Real Madrid managed to do to them what they did to Celtic, and this is where I don't buy into the narrative that Celtic can't compete in Europe. I don't think any Celtic fan wants the club to spend millions upon millions, but what they do want is they want the Champions League theme to kick in at Celtic Park and have a chance of winning a game. And that's the key to it all. So you can purchase, you can recruit properly, you can look for players out in the market that can make Celtic competitive and make them put up a real fight at home. And every now and then you get a wonder away result. But right now there's a narrative that's out there saying, oh, you know, Celtic can't compete. I don't buy into it. Brendan Rodgers is back for me to try and do something in Europe.
I agree.
And I think the one thing that a lot of people, and I think he's a good coach, the one thing that if he can get Celtic into a knockout game, if they lose, so what? That's progress. They don't think they're going to make the Champions League final. They're going to bank 60 million and they've got all the money that they've made this year from merchandise, season ticket sales, you name it. They'll have 150 to 200 million in the bank once the next set of accounts come out. So they're in a really good position. But in the Real Madrid game, when the Champions League theme kicked in, I looked from the press area and I could see Toni Kroos looking to Modric, and the two of them looked at each other, and you know what it's like with the noise. Once the theme kicks in, the noise was incredible, and the two of them looked at each other and they started smiling. And then I thought, they're smiling because they're not overawed. They're going to wait. Celtic played really well for 60 minutes, but as you know, they don't hand out 60-minute cups. And then they just picked Celtic off. And later on, I think it was later on that season, I went into my daughter's room and I said, "You're not going to school today." And she looked and she went, "What?" And I said, "Get your gear on. We're going down to Liverpool. I've got 2 tickets for Liverpool, Real Madrid." And because Liverpool obviously were my second team because of Dalglish. And so we went down to Liverpool, Real Madrid. And strangely enough, from those many, many years ago, it's the first time I've been in a stadium being a fan for a long time. So we had our Liverpool tops on. Liverpool go 2-0 up. And my daughter at 13 years of age turned around and she went, "Dad, we've been in this movie before, haven't we?" And I went, "Yep." I said, "Liverpool are about to get battered." and so they did 5-2.
Is there any player or person that you've came across in your career that you've been starstruck? What a big, massive kind of worldwide name, or anybody that you've met? Anybody that kind of
Anybody you felt
any stand out? Anybody that you felt, oh, I'm actually interviewing or I'm speaking to such and
Well,
such?
I enjoyed being in Brian Clough's house
There's
because
a name.
That's a big shout.
when we sat in Brian Clough's house, it was at the time they were offering Martin a new contract. So that was my in to get to him. So I managed to get somebody that was his mate, organised the interview, went down, sandwiches, tea, did the interview. He was absolutely sensational. I loved him as a kid. And at the end of it, and I got him to talk about Martin, but one of my favourite players in that side, Martin, slightly miffed when I mentioned it, but John Robertson was one of my all-time heroes as well. So Clough talks about them, and then after I'd done the interview and I put it out on STV, phone goes and it's Martin, and he's left, and I'm like, "Hi Martin," and he went, "How much did he ask for?" Right? And I was like, "What?" He says, "Come on, how much did you pay Cloughie?" And I said, "Martin, I got it for nothing." And he went, "Fuck off, no you didn't." And I said, "I'm telling you, I got it for nothing." And he says, "You lucky bastard." He says he always charges money. And I said, no, I managed to wangle it. And he was laughing his head off about it. But it was brilliant. My favourite story, and you maybe have heard it a million times, but I tell it just because of my upbringing in Lanarkshire. You know what it's like? You're invited to a party, you're going to somebody's house, and you've got to bring something. So I'd managed to get an interview which everybody was chasing with R9, Ronaldo. So me and the cameraman was
Just
STV.
say was the starstruck girl, they slain Martin O'Neill with Ronaldo.
He's not starstruck,
I know. Starstruck listening.
So we went over to Milan. He was playing for Inter Milan at the time, and my cameraman was a big Celtic fan, so he came across with us Inter Milan, and when we got off the plane, the agent said, here's your 2 tickets for Inter against AC Milan in the San Siro. And then the next day, the limousine will pick you up, take you out to Inter's private training ground, and you'll interview him. And I was interviewing him ahead of the World Cup in '98 for Scotland-Brazil. It was the opening game. So I'd got a package, I'd wrapped up a present for him. He's on $30 million a year. I'm on 2 Quenchy cups and some of those cakes. Right? So we got out there.
And by the way, he's not getting money.
So I thought to myself, we go out to the interview. He was brilliant. He's only 21 years of age, stick thin, at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
And he couldn't speak English. He can speak English now, but he couldn't speak English. If he was able to speak English, it would have been broken English.
Was a translator with you then?
I had a translator there for him. So, and he said, Rangers had approached me, about signing for them.
I thought that was a myth, was it? Is that true?
No, that's true. That's true. So I said to him, I've brought you a present. And he looked at me and he's like, and I said, yeah, I've brought you a present. So this, I'd wrapped up in gold paper, and he opened the paper and he went, Celtic. I brought my Celtic top, right, from a title-winning side. And he went in and he got his number 10 shirt.
Brilliant.
And he gave me the shirt and signed it. And in the studios now is Ronaldo's shirt, and on the right-hand side of it, on the left-hand side's him with the World Player of the Year, and on the right-hand side is me and him with a Celtic top. Unfortunately, Celtic would have needed at that point to have sold Barrowfield, sold practically 3 bits of the stadium to try and buy him. He was wonderful.
Is that, see, you mentioned about your journalist career, about picking also football players. Like, I think Scott Brown mentioned it in an interview with, they done one, I think it was with, I don't know if it was Machiavelli or the Son he done it with, and he was talking about, like, he takes bits from Gordon Strachan, Lennon, Rodgers and stuff. Is that similar in journalists? Do you do that as well? Do you pick things you've seen, or I won't do that, but I'll do this? Like you say, Jonathan Watson, I'll do this. Is that something you take on your career as well?
Absolutely, you've got to, because you can't. You're not inventing the wheel on your own. You're looking at people who've done really well that you admired. Coming from, of all places, Newark Hill, I must have been one of about, maybe 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people who bought the Sunday Times. But I bought the Sunday Times quite simply because Hugh McIlvanney used to write at the back page. He was a columnist, and he was my hero as a journalist. I had nothing but admiration for him. I loved his ability to paint a picture with words. He had a far greater vocabulary than I had, and he was a gem of a man. And if I was talking about my top 5 favourite interviews, he's in it. And the reason he's in it as well, because he'd witnessed the halcyon days of British football. He covered them, but he was also a boxing fanatic, and I loved Muhammad Ali. And he was one of only 2 journalists after the Rumble in the Jungle to go back and sit with Ali after it and chat to him. So I sat for an hour in the Hilton with him, did an interview. We talked Jimmy Johnston, we talked George Best, we talked Muhammad Ali, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, it doesn't get any better than this, folks. And it's just, it was brilliant. So you take the best of everybody. And by the way, you take the best of everybody, whether you're 16 or 60.
No,
you're always learning.
It's a school day. You learn something new every day. See, obviously I'm going to go a wee bit back in time. Obviously around about the Fergus McCann coming into Celtic. What was the media, the hype, all that back in the day then? Because really only coverage you were getting, you didn't have Sky Sports News and all that back then. It was newspapers or teletext or an odd Scotland Today thing on Channel 3. So, and I remember it as a young kid. So what was it a massive thing for the journalism, and were you guys all?
I'll tell you, it was a massive thing, because had it not been for Fergus and Brian Dempsey, Celtic would have folded.
And there was no help back in the day. It was just were doing
accommodation stuff and that, or administration stuff.
I would probably cast aspersions towards maybe how the bank were handling it at the time. you know, when you consider they were going to close Celtic for £1 million, and, you know, lots of other clubs were running deficits that would have put Celtics like a pinprick. So for them to step up, Fergus was a difficult man to even interview, but he had a PR guy at Celtic called Peter McLean, and Peter was a gentleman and a brilliant guy. I still stay in touch with him. He's a really intelligent man, and he was.
Is he still at Celtic? No,
he lives in Brazil. And he was the buffer for Fergus, and he was a PR guy at Celtic, and he was a gentleman, and he would obviously try and avoid. He always wanted to defuse bombs and protect Celtic, as you should do, and he always wanted to make sure that Fergus wasn't getting a curveball, you know. So it was always interesting, but Fergus did exactly what it said on the tin. I'll give you this money and I'm going at this point, and here's the 5-year plan, and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm going to take my money. Are you aware of it? Yes, thank you, you've saved the club, you're away with your 49 million, and Celtic has got a brilliant structure to build on.
That was like the old sketch with Owen and Excuse, where do you want a glass of water, mind? There's like, the water's free, but it's £1 for the rental of the glass. The old Jonathan Watson one with Fergus Buchanan.
That's a good friend who knows you. Obviously, I think JP went to school with John Baird. He said to say hello, he's asking for you.
Yeah, he's in Australia.
He's asking, he's obviously
he told him. He texted us yesterday to tell him he was asking for you.
Yeah, he's a great lad, John. In fact, we had him on the show on numerous occasions. The great thing about having, the company is you get to interview great people who've played in our game, and then you get to get in the car and go out. And I would advise you guys, because I know you love your football, get your equipment, get in the car and go to people that can't come here, and go and sit and chat with them, and talk about great games and enjoy the excitement of it, because this learning curve for you is, how great is it when you go and you interview players and they'll tell you about great games. You know, if you sit down and John Hartson suddenly tells you how it felt to hit a 20-yarder into the roof of the net while his mum's behind the goals and he's scoring against Liverpool, all of these things are magic.
It's just, I think it's just incredible. Like you for me, talking to guys like yourself, and you get to know the ins and outs of the game, and obviously at the moment the game is Scottish football for me, which I know there's been the last few years been a lot of opinions about how can we get youth players through Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, how we can make Scotland better. For me, I think the Lower League, again, it's no disrespect to the teams in the Lower League, but Celtic sending B team to play against like East Kilbride, Cowden B, Fabian Rovers, it's good for them to get 90 minutes, but to then come up and play against Mirren, Aberdeen at that level, for me, I don't know how to develop. For me, they're better going on loan to maybe teams in the SPL or the Championship, playing every week. But Ayer went to Kilmarnock, Brendan had a plan, Ryan Christie, Aberdeen had a plan. I don't see where the plan is where they go from that level to that and then go play in the first team.
Especially with no incentive.
I think you need to be, I don't want to keep you back to Kieran Tierney, but for me to get in the Celtic first team at the moment, I know the pathways a wee bit, but I think you need to be exceptional to even get anyone to the team.
Yeah, and we're never going to solve it on this podcast, let me tell you. But
pen, paper, we'll do this, we'll do that.
A lot of players would like to see the reserve league brought back, but it's not going to happen because...
Is that due to finances, you think?
No, I think a lot of clubs now have moved on to the feeling that they don't want their top players playing in a reserve game, and then it threatens them, maybe for coming back into the top team. The real bonus for young players in the reserve league was you were playing against men, and not only could they teach you, but you learned the tricks of the trade against experienced pros. So how do you resolve that situation? I think a little bit of what you said was, why don't you get players that go on loan, but when they go on loan it's a minimum a year, and they can't call them back, and they can play against your team if they want, and you let them get a chance to develop and play regularly. And you cannot put stipulations in like, if I give you the player, you must play him.
It's up to him to get in the team.
It's up to him to get in the team.
We've had a number of successes over the last few years with loan players. You look at our team just now with Callum McGregor, you look at Christopher Ayer a few years ago that went out taking a Kilmarnock as well. We have had a few players that the loan system has worked for Celtic. We have been brought these players back. They've performed brilliantly for us, and with Christopher Ayer we've managed to get a substantial fee for their services. So the loan market just now, I think it is our only avenue for us to kind of properly develop players. Obviously we've got kind of Leonardstown, Barrowfield, etc. But I see the loan market just now, if we've got our young players going out and playing proper kind of first team football, that's the only way they're going to develop. I don't think the lower league is really fit for purpose at that level. So we need to resort to a different avenue, shall we say, with the loan market.
Well, for me, the loan league, there's no incentive for young boys. So that they can't win a trophy, they can't win medals. But they're going to do that at the club if they're aspiring to be in the Celtic team, the Rangers team, the Hearts team, or whatever team it may be.
Look at that list.
They're trying to win trophies.
So we've got Celtic players over there that's a kind of a system.
Matthew Anderson and somebody else, isn't it? Is that right?
It was Toby Oljuvendi, but he's now away.
We've got a few players, is it Adrima Wacker or something in Austria? So we've got players over there that they're developing in that league, and that's the only avenue that Celtic feel that's most beneficiary for us to kind of develop our players. So it is something that definitely needs to be looked at in Scottish football, I'd say. Because for us to kind of loan our players out to the lower leagues in England, to Austria, why we go down that avenue?
Look at both on low level.
Do you guys obviously chat about that on the show with obviously the Scotland national team then as well, and how because essentially these boys' dreams are going to be dreaming to play with the national team. Playing the lower league, you're never going to get a shot at playing with the national team.
We don't have enough of the talented players. We don't have enough. We don't have defenders. We don't have people that can score goals. So quite simply, we're not going to win games. You know, we have had a problem for a decade. Scotland played really well against England at Wembley. Gordon Strachan was the manager. They lost 3 goals to set pieces, and Gordon Strachan walked up the tunnel and he went, we can't defend, we can't score goals. I'm sorry, that problem's still there. We may well have the odd technically gifted player, but there's not enough Ben Dokes in the world to come through at Scotland, and there's not enough good defenders, central defenders, that you could think, here's one for the future. So,
is there a way to do it? Because obviously the players we've got are playing at a very good level. They're playing players in the Premier League. A couple of our boys now are over in Serie A now playing. You've obviously got Lewis Ferguson.
Yeah, but they're all midfielders. Grant Hanley's made 1 appearance in 18 months for Norwich.
But it's like the old Colin Henry thing, in it. Doesn't play a lot at club level, but gets a game for.
Yeah, but you need that match sharpness, and if you don't get it, you're in a situation where you get exposed by players who are playing at the highest level. We're in a league at the moment where we're coming up against Portugal. You know, we're playing against Croatia. We're playing against top players who, if you make a mistake, they'll score.
So I think that's why, as much as your better players, even though just say Kieran Tierney, right, he's back fit, he's maybe not played with Arsenal, right? People might go, well, he shouldn't be playing with Scotland, right? So he should. For me, it's one of the ones because of the ability he's got. Does his ability, will that take control for him to play? But at the same time that you mentioned, you need to be sharp, you need to be fit, because I don't think you can go and play. Just say you're playing with like Grant Hanley or whoever it is, Kenny McLean with Norwich, maybe not playing, I know he's playing with Norwich, but maybe not playing much, and then go and play with Scotland. How can you then go to step up like you play Portugal? The level, again, the offence, the Championship, obviously we know Barry Bannon, it's a fantastic level, but if you're not playing at that level and then having to go and play against Fernandes, Diego Dallo, it's a massive jump.
I'm asking you, would you rather have a 60% Kieran Tierney or 100% of a guy who's playing at a lower level? You take a 60% Kieran Tierney all day long.
So that's a hard one to do you have the fit guy or do you have the guy who's got the natural ability already there?
Yeah, that's what Steve Clarke initially said when he came in. If you're playing, I'll pick you. And then he realised, wait a minute, we haven't got any players at the level we need to play. So it's a difficult one. I couldn't even give you a definitive answer on how to solve the Lowland League, the Reserve League, the fact that we have to develop more technically gifted players. Are we coaching the skill factor out of them? It's such a long programme. But what I would say is, Steve Clark's got us to 2 major tournaments. He's going to get his 2 years, and we just have to suck it up.
Yeah.
You know, because there's nobody else out there that you think
We
is
were
going to
chatting
do a job.
about this, Peter, and obviously that's what I was saying to Ryan. He's got enough stock in the bank now that he's got us to the 2 tournaments. But that's why the SFA, in my opinion, are not in a hurry to say that you need to move on now. As much as the fans are all making numbers about
I think
it.
you've got a great point now about the fundamentals of the game, whereas we need to score goals and we need to keep goals out. And at both ends there, well, basically we can't compete with these other teams. We've got one end, we've got London Knights that's playing in League One Birmingham, and at the other end we've got Grant Hanley. So to compete with
And
teams
that's
like Croatia,
that's no disrespect to them, because they're
Portugal,
playing
that's
at
great,
but
right,
you've just got to look at the quality levels there.
But see, the other night, as much as it might not have been good on the eyes of a football fan watching it,
It's all about good
I thought
results.
they had good results.
It's all-
Yeah, and if I can at this point probably leave you with a story on ability. We played 6-a-sides the other day there, and every now and then you turn up and you think, I wonder who's going to be here today, because it's all ex-pros that play in it. And I turned up, there was Aidan McGeady and James McFadden, and I looked at the two and I went, we're going to get absolutely mullered here. And James McFadden is just still a genius on the ball, and McGeady's feet
he's just
were
left there, hasn't he?
outrageous. And it
Is he retired, or does he still want to play?
no, he's retired.
Is he retired?
and he's
United last year,
and his skill, his technical ability, and James is the type of guy that every time we play, if there's 3 guys around James and there's no keeper in, and I'm standing in front of the goal, James looks and he thinks, do you know what? I'm going to try and dribble past the 3 guys and score myself.
I'm not passing to Peter.
And he usually does. So, you know, I long for a James McFadden.
What a story. Listen, lads, I think he's all second it with me and say it's
Fantastic.
been great sitting here with Peter today and having a chat. I know you've got a busy day. We are probably going to have to do a part 2 because there's loads more I want to ask you, honestly.
Massively appreciated.
I want to say a massive thanks for coming along this morning and having a chat with us, Peter.
No problem. Different
Great
class.
meeting you.
Thank you very
lads.
much, I appreciate it.
Sorry about the sore throat, everybody.
No,
but
that's all right.
I'll make sure I get
I'm
it
sorry
for
about the
part
flies taking me the cakes today, but
Yeah.
He
I
must
wanted
have
to go
been
with it.
having commentating and James McFadden last night, that's why the sore throats come up in it.
And it's also it's the first time I've ever done a podcast with a Southern company.
He was practising today a wee bit today for us, but he ended up getting a sore throat, so that's how we kind of do it. But to you guys of yours, thanks very much for tuning in. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. It's totally free to do so. It'll allow you to become a member of the Celtic Unrestricted View family. But for now, take care. We'll see you all again. Bye bye.
Bye bye.